Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back again for the second NBA breakdown video that I'm going to be doing for today, January 23rd, 2019. If this is your first time to my channel, I do daily fantasy content as well as sports betting. We focus on the NFL season primarily throughout the entire season. Now that that season's wrapping up, yes, I know there's still the Super Bowl, but now that it's wrapping up, we're just going to be getting into NBA slates. Not going to be doing every single slate just because it's a daily process and it's tough right now while in college, but I'm going to try and get these videos out there as soon as I can on the day and as often as I can. So I'd appreciate it right now if you could hit that like button. It helps me out a ton. For those of you returning, welcome back. We're building an awesome community here. We have a Facebook group down below. I'll probably pin up a little banner somewhere down here to just prompt you to go into that Facebook group. If you like daily fantasy sports, if you like DFS, sports betting, sports in general, really, we're just building a community there for people to share a lot of their interests. I personally don't have a lot of friends who play daily fantasy sports or who sports bet, so it's just nice to kind of build a community and bounce ideas and really just become a sharper player through knowledge spillover and knowledge of other people. So make sure you check that stuff out. Make sure you consider joining the Facebook group. And throughout this video, if at any time you think that it's helping you, I also prompt you to consider subscribing, because you subscribing helps this channel grow, helps grow the community, and also will help me personally. So I appreciate it very much. Let's jump into this video. So the first thing I want to stress, and the first thing I want to get out there in all of these videos, and eventually when I become a live streamer and I could really just do these shows live in the morning and you guys can see them either live or whenever you want, is the most important thing that I think, obviously, in NBA is injuries, right? The slate shifts. You could have an amazing lineup at 5 p.m. and then come 7 p.m., half your lineup's not playing, or there's just tons more value opening up. Like last night we saw with the Raptors, lots more value opened up, both in the Sacramento, or that single game, right? But on both teams, Sacramento and the Raptors. Tons of value opened up in that spot. Value was lost in other places with some other players playing, iffy situations. So injuries are the biggest thing. Right here we're on Draftkings, but I'm going to slide over to my spreadsheet where the night before I try and capture as much injury news as I can. Fantasy Labs is a great source to find out a lot of injury news. Their Twitter account, Fantasy Labs NBA, probably the best source right now out there. It's just up to the minute. They just source all of Twitter and all the news, and they know everything that's happening, whether it's a questionable, whether it's these guys are possibly going to be playing. They get all the news that you possibly can get, so make sure you're following them. But these are the key news, right? I mean, Anthony Davis has something going on with his hand. He wasn't probably going to play today anyways, but now it looks like it could be more of a long-term issue. He's out. I'll highlight over some of them. Kawhi Leonard's not playing till Friday. Andre Drummond, he's questionable with a concussion. That's a big deal because it could get Blake Griffin into the lineup with potentially going against no Anthony Davis. Well, definitely going against no Anthony Davis. So that's a big matchup right there. Simmons is questionable, and so is Jimmy Butler. So monitor that. It seems like Butler should be playing, but Simmons is very questionable and could be getting some rest. If he's out, it obviously adds more usage to a guy like Joel Embiid. So monitor that. Marc Gasol is questionable. He's a little iffy. He should be playing, back soreness, since he just played last night. We'll see what happens there. If he's out, it makes Justin Holiday an even better play. Also, Jaren Jackson Jr. is back, and he'll be an even better play. Aaron Gordon, questionable, but leaning towards probable in an incredible matchup. Him and Vooch both for Orlando against Brooklyn, who just can't rebound the ball, right? Yes, Jared Allen's getting a little bit better out there, actually a lot better out there doing that, but still Aaron Gordon's just in an absolute smash spot if he does play, and he's at a cheap price, which we'll get to. Gallinari's still out for the Clippers, and Lou Williams is probably going to be questionable, but more so probable since he just played limits restriction last night. We'll see if that's taken off. Al Horford is going to be rested at the center position for the Celtics. This opens up some value. As you can see here, I listed Aaron Bournes, Morris is out, or Aaron Baines, Morris is out there, Daniel Theis, wherever they go with that. Check the starting lineups, of course. Tristan Thompson, that's been ruled out, so Ante Zizic is going to be, again, the guy getting all the run out there. Luke Kornet is going to be out for a while now, so that's going to probably, spell his name wrong here, but that's probably going to input Cantor, which there's early rumors into the starting lineup. Ish Smith is out. Not sure this really helps too many people since the minutes are usually split out there. I forget the backup. We'll look at it, but it helps Reggie Bullock a lot, at least from a usage perspective. So that's the main injuries, right? The things obviously to watch. We already have a lot of news on who's out with Horford, with Leonard, with Anthony Davis, with these guys being out. The main things to watch, I'd say right now, are Drummond's news. Is he going to be in or out? If he's out, that opens up a ton of potential for a guy like Griffin, and then obviously Zaza is going to see his run as well, still at a decent value play. Another big news is probably Aaron Gordon. So right now for me, it's Drummond and Aaron Gordon on this slate. Yes, there's going to be some other things with Philadelphia, seeing if Simmons is in, seeing if Jimmy Butler's in, if both of them are out. Incredible spot for a guy like Joel Embiid, who just went absolutely bonkers 2 nights ago. So that's injuries. Definitely things to keep in mind. I just kind of state down the injuries early on so I can get an idea for the slate, get an idea for where a value is going to pop up, where chalk's going to start to become. I write some notes over here just based on what I think about the injuries, how that impacts the slate. Like Zizic is now, I looked, he's pretty much a fair price. He's not that 3,700 value. He's not that 41, whatever his prices were value. He's at $6,000 flat now for a guy who's been basically since inserted into the lineup close to a point per minute guy, which again, if he's getting you 30 points and he's going to play about 30 minutes, $6,000 is exactly fair pricing if you're 5xing value. And for those of you who don't know what 5xing value is, we can go over to DraftKings. So we can pick anybody here. We'll go to the point guard position. Maybe there's an even number, so it's easier. Yep, so $7,000 for Chris Paul. Obviously, he's out. I'm just trying to show an example here. But for $7,000, Chris Paul would have to get you, to feel comfortable, 35 points. And for you to not feel bad about that play, 35 points. And what does that mean? It just means 5xing your value. So what that means, or actually it's probably going to be closer to 6x on a site like DraftKings, 5x on a site like FanDuel because you have $60,000 to spend there. So 5 to 6xing your value. What does that mean? So you get $50,000 to spend. If for every dollar you spend, if every $1,000 you spend, you get 6x value in return. So whatever that is, 6 points in return for every $1,000 you're spending. If you're spending $50,000, you're going to get 300 points in return, right? That's the whole point of it. So if you can get a 300-point lineup in NBA, you're usually in a pretty good spot to cash in most tournaments, to cash in your cash games for sure. So that's the whole point of it. Obviously, you want a little bit more than 6x value if you want to win a tournament. Most tournaments aren't won with just 300 points, but the idea is if you can build a lineup that's floor at least has that 300-point value or close to it. If some of those guys in your lineup have their ceiling games, or more so than not have their ceiling games, maybe 3 or 4 have a ceiling game where they're scoring 1.5x their floor or whatever it might be, that's where you start to get into that 350 range and you're actually having a chance to knock down tournaments. So look for guys to 5 to 6x their value ideally. You're always going to have guys like, we can go Josh Jackson played last night, $4,100. He just went absolutely bananas for like around 50 points. And at $4,100, he was what, 12xing his value? That's insane. You're going to have that sometimes at the value spots. You're not going to get 12x value out of the guys who are $1,300 like Harden, right? If Harden 5x's, he's going for like 70 points, so, or 65 points, whatever it is. So you got to kind of pick and choose where you're getting your value and where you're thinking your points are going to get spread out. On DraftKings and FanDuel, it's favored for these guys up here because they can get triple doubles, a lot of assists, all these things that are in a lot of different parts of the stat sheet, so they can get those points racked up. It's really in the mid-range and low range where you have to try and hit on that 5x value and turn it really into like a 7x. In that higher mid-range, around the 7 to 8K, if you're getting 5x, you're feeling good about it. So that's just a quick overview of that. Just look for guys who are 5 to 6x in value on DraftKings, closer to that 6x mark, so you can kind of build a solid lineup going in. And that's also how you identify underpriced guys, overpriced guys, guys who are definitely just out of the proper pricing by DraftKings or FanDuel, wherever you're playing on. But we're using DraftKings right now, so yeah. So what I do next, looking at the Vegas spreads, and again, it's like 9 a.m. here. A lot of them actually aren't out, and that's because there's a lot of injury news, right? So in regards to what's going on in this Drummond situation, that's not out yet, and also the 76ers have some question marks. So you can see there's nothing going on in the Sixers game total-wise because they're waiting to see. There's big impacts on guys like Simmons and Butler. There's nothing out in this Detroit game yet because there's big impacts with a guy like Andre Drummond. If he's not playing, obviously, he's a huge factor. And then we have some guys here or some situations here where there's just players that aren't out or iffy and there was games or they just haven't set the line yet, right? It's pretty early. Lines come out usually by now, if not in the next few hours, so I'll be updating those personally. So this definitely doesn't help a lot trying to get an early task on where they're going to be. But a way, if the lines aren't out, that you could look at it, and I didn't do it yet because I want to get this video out there. Slept past my 6 a.m. alarm. That's never good. But points per game average, and this is a way that you can just combine both teams' points per game, and usually the over-under, I'm not going to say it's right on that because there's different situations with players being in and out, acquisitions that just don't factor in what happened earlier in the year to the total. But for the most part, it's going to be right around there. You could at least get a sense of how high scoring that game is going to be. And also, if you take into account something that we've been looking at, which is pace, these are each team's individual pace on the slate. And then if you just combine them, you can see the game pace. So if there's a game pace and I didn't put the projected totals in because most of them weren't in yet, but what I would do is just put all the over-under totals in. If you're getting a high over-under or a high projected total, if there's no over-under given by Vegas, and there's a quick pace, which most of these games this year, since the NBA is just so high-paced, are. It used to be if it's over 100 total, that's good. Now every game is basically over 100 because there's just so many more three-pointers shot early in the shot clock, fast breaks, all that type of thing. It's just not slowed down, and just a lot less defense, to put it bluntly. So what you could do is you can just look at the pace, look at the totals, and then kind of identify where your target games are, at least on a high level, right? So if you want to just start to look down at situations you can capitalize on, Vegas is a great spot to do that. Obviously, you also want to take into account the line, the spread. Now, you don't want to predict blowouts. You can see here there's very much blowout potential without a Tristan Thompson and just Cleveland's putrid to start with, going up against the Celtics, who have a full arsenal of players. They're resting Al Horford because they think this game's that much of a cakewalk, which the spread indicates that. Cleveland 16.5-point underdogs. This is an exact situation where there's blowout territory, where it's risky to play guys on that Celtics side of the ball. But if they do get into that blowout territory, it likely means a couple of guys on the Celtics did pretty well. It's just a bummer when they get pulled in the fourth quarter, and they're already at 50 points, whatever it might be in DraftKings. But you don't want to ever predict blowouts, but you should be aware of them, right, when you're constructing your lineups. I know people don't want to predict them and say, stay away from these players because they're a blowout situation, because any night the teams can stay close, and blowout situations can happen midway or late through the fourth quarter. A team can hang around 7 points and the starters have to stay in. But you do want to be aware of it, at least, especially on bigger slates where there's possibly other spots to target. This game actually has a decent total compared to some of the other ones on the slate at 216. But it's not something that I really want to target when most of those points are coming from the Celtics, and you really don't know where those points are going to go for the most part outside of a guy like Irving, and I'm not sure I want to pay up on this type of a slate. So Vegas is big. It's just tough right now with not a lot of over-unders out. And then the next thing that I usually do, and I'm trying to get a little better at building my own projection systems for NBA. That's actually what I'm working on with my roommate. But what you can do with Vegas, or what you could do next and just your early on, is I like to look at target offenses, so just defense versus position. Overall, if you'd like, but I just really wanted to break it down by defense versus position. It's not every team on this slate. Again, I could do that, especially if I kind of just build a nice little database where it automatically does it for me. But the teams that I want to target on this slate are here, the offenses. I mean, it's a good amount of them, right? There's 20 teams on the slate tonight. I picked, 12 teams here. So these are the teams that I have early interest in targeting. Projected total, again, the pace is here, so it's all in one look. And then I kind of go through, and I'm going to color coordinate this so it's easier for you guys to look at on the screen and easier for myself. But what I'm going to do here, and just really color coordinate where the bottom half or bottom third of the defenses are. So you got right here, you have the Hawks are 29th, second to last against the point guard position. What does that do? It makes the Bulls at least an early intriguing spot. So what do I do here? I put Zach LaVine into my guard position as somebody who's interesting. I had it broken down by point guard, small forward, shooting guard, all that, power forward. But on DraftKings, there's a lot of guys who have dual eligibility, so I just kind of put them into buckets of guard, forward, and center, because you can put them anywhere in your lineup if it fits. So that's just what I did. I mean, we see Chris Dunn on the Bulls there as well. He's a guard, point guard, shooting guard, wherever he'll play. So these are just early targets based on the fact that they have good matchups, based on the fact that I already like the pace and the over-under in these types of games. Bulls-Hawks has the fastest pace on the slate that I chose from, and that's out there so far, I believe. So Bulls-Hawks is the fastest pace in the slate, so I'm liking that already because it's going to be quick, and what pace means is just possessions for each team per game on average. So the more possessions there are, the more fantasy points there are going to be in the game, and the way that you get it for the game is you just add up both teams' pace. You can get that from Hollinger's statistics. That's what I use online for NBA. It's really good. Pulled a lot of my stats from there. It's updated, I think, daily. And they have the highest pace. They have the second highest total that's out there right now. I think there's going to be some other games at higher totals, but they have a high total. Over 220 is a good total. And the spread of this game, if we go back to Vegas, the spread of this game is, where are Atlanta and is -2. So this is going to be a good game. Has the potential for overtime. When you see those small spreads, there's always a potential for overtime because Vegas thinks the game's going to stay close. Extra time obviously is great for DK, FanDuel, just DFS in general. So this game is looking like it could be a good situation to target, right? Good pace, good over-under. The spread is close, and then that's where I start to just look at these stats right here and see, okay, which positions are the best. And in this game, both of these teams are pretty bad at defending many of the positions. Things that stand out, both teams aren't good at defending the point guard, 29th and 27th. Both teams are pretty bad at defending the center. The Hawks are really bad at defending the power forward position. So what do? I go back and I look on DraftKings, and this is just kind of how I build my lineups. I'm kind of telling you that as I look at this specific slate, but there's some things to like in here for this specific slate. If we go to power forward, I mean, you can play a guy like Bobby Portis still on a limit, but he's in a good spot here, especially whether he plays power forward or center. It doesn't matter. He's in a great spot. So that's just kind of how I go about the process now that I knew that took the first half of this show. But I'm just going to break down now into early interest guys and guys that I'm looking at. So injuries always make or break the slate. You have to literally just have constant information coming. We've already mentioned that. So injuries are going to change all my early interest. Now, these are guys that I was interested in last night, literally the day before. Lots of things have changed probably since then. Maybe it hasn't been announced. I haven't seen anything. But these are just guys that I'm interested in based on the game flow, pace, injuries, all these types of things. So I think Zach LaVine's a pretty good spot. He has a good matchup, and that's really the main reason I put him in there. A high-paced game. He's going to be playing either the point guard or shooting guard position tonight, and he has a huge usage rate. And if we go over to Zach LaVine and we want to just look at him quickly, he's under 7K. And the guy under 7K, he basically has to score you 35 points to feel good about that. Zach LaVine has 35 points in his arsenal, especially when he's going up against the second worst team against his position on the slate. So I like Zach LaVine a lot tonight. I think he could end up being a little bit chalky, but on a 10-game slate, he could come in at sub 10% ownership. Where are we going here? So we'll let DraftKings load back up. Couple other guys that I like. I mean, we know that Kawhi Leonard's out, and we've been kind of pushing this narrative of Kyle Lowry. When Kawhi Leonard's out, his usage rate just goes through the roof. He's just a different type of player when he's out, and he's been holding to that, right? I mean, over 30 points. His salary is still coming down. It makes no sense to me. This guy was $7,600. I understand that it was a smaller slate yesterday, so you have to entice ownership elsewhere a little bit. But at $7,200, he's in a great spot. He's cheaper than he was the last 2 or 3 games, with Kawhi Leonard out. And again, this guy has to get you 35 points, which when Kawhi Leonard's out, he's averaging well over 30 points a game. DraftKings points per game. Kawhi Leonard's just in my player pool. He's a smash. And if we want to go right back to the same spot, I had split between Serge Ibaka and Siakam last night. Siakam looked awful early on, then they both ended up with basically the same points. Ibaka's another guy who averages over a point per minute, well over a point per minute. And when Kawhi Leonard's off the floor, he sees the biggest usage increase. Kawhi Leonard, or Serge Ibaka, again, another guy who back-to-back nights, back-to-back videos, these guys are going to be in them because of that Kawhi Leonard being out. We mentioned Aaron Gordon. I love him. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. Him and his teammate Vooch, which we're about to get to. Just Brooklyn can't rebound the ball. They're just terrible defensively against the power forward, against in the front court. So, yeah, I like Aaron Gordon. It's pretty much as simple as that. His price is very intriguing. Vooch is probably, and there's a couple ways to pay up. So if I want to tell you who I'm paying up for, I mean, James Harden is an easy way to go, right? If we go back to the Vegas sheet, as of right now, at least the highest total on the slate, it's only a 7-point spread, which again, 7-point spreads really are nothing to be worried about. His team has the highest right now projected total with 117.25. Obviously, highest over under in the slate. We want to go into some pace stats with this game. This game is 101.3, so not an incredibly great pace. You're going to have a couple other possessions in these other games. But when James Harden is just handling the ball for all those possessions, it really kind of eliminates a lot of the pace, especially when he doesn't have to rely on his teammates to score the ball. So James Harden at 13.4. Obviously, if you're paying up, he's a great spot to go to, especially if value starts to open up on this slate. There's a couple of value options that I'll touch on. I like Embiid. I think that I might go away from James Harden tonight, which I think a lot of people might, since he didn't burn you, but he kind of did at his price last time out there with, I think, only 55 points. Embiid, if Simmons and Butler somehow sit, I think he's the chalk on this slate. That's going to be something that comes out like probably 10 minutes before tip, so just stay aware of that. If Drummond's out, Blake Griffin's too cheap. It's as simple as that for me. If Drummond's out, Blake Griffin's too cheap. The guy at under 10K, $9,700, he has to get you 50 points for you to feel good about that with Drummond out. With Drummond in there, Blake Griffin's a candidate to go for 50 points. When he's out, his usage rate's just going to go through the roof. Ish Smith's also out, which really doesn't have a lot of effect on Blake Griffin, but it is some ball handling duties that Blake Griffin might have to take with Ish Smith out. So I like Blake Griffin probably the most. Let's say that there's a situation where Simmons, Butler, and Andre Drummond are out. In that situation, I think I still do like Blake Griffin. He is only $500, or no, he's $800 cheaper than Joel Embiid. So it does make it a little bit tougher. Joel Embiid does have a decent matchup. So it would be tough. I think Embiid and Blake Griffin in that situation are basically a coin flip, especially since they're similarly priced. Vooch at the center position. So there's a lot of good centers on this slate. I'll just touch on a couple of them. Vooch against Brooklyn. That's a spot you target all year long. This guy's having an absolute career year. He's been a monster this year. You can just rely on this guy to probably get you double-double in this situation. Probably threaten a 20-20 game in this situation against Brooklyn where teams have just feasted on them. Vooch is in a great spot. If you want to go to my centers that I'm looking at just early right now, quickly. So a lot of these are value plays, right? You have Aaron Baines. He's going to be coming in for Al Horford, most likely. Watch that. He's at $3,500. That's an absolute smash spot if he does get the start. And this is a big total game, potential blowout spot, but a guy like Baines should stay in the game in that situation. We also have Daniel Theis. If he stays in the game, whether it's power forward or center, if he starts, he's also a great play. Miles Turner in there just because I like what he's been doing. I think at $6,600, he's way too cheap. And then we get into the guys we talked about, Embiid and Vooch. Julius Randle, I think at $8,400, he's going to be starting. There's no Anthony Davis out there. Yes, he has a tough matchup. If Andre Drummond's out, though, I like Julius Randle even more. Again, $8,400. What does he have to do for you? 42 points with the guy who has a ceiling potential of over 50 points. Maybe a little bit too expensive, maybe. You can see his price has shot up. Maybe he's a little overpriced at $8,400, but I think it'll suppress some ownership, make him a better play. I like him. And then Cantor, like we mentioned, is supposed to get the start tonight. $5,000, dirt cheap. You have a lot of cheap centers here. You can punt center easily, but I think it's dangerous with the guys that we have at the position, a little more expensive in Vooch, in Embiid, potentially in Drummond as well. So Cantor at $5,000, though, he could be a smash play. We know that his points per minute are just off the charts. He's an incredible points per minute guy, well over a point per minute, challenging that 1.5 points per minute range. Sometimes he's in that 2 points per minute range, depending on the game being played. So yeah, if he's going to see 25 minutes and start in this game, I don't see how you go away from Cantor. A guy in 25 minutes at $5,000 is going to get you 25 points if he stays healthy. It's just as simple as that. His usage is incredible. Always a threat for a double-double. If he's in that starting lineup come 7:30, come tip-off, I think I want to have a good amount of Enes Kanter, which a lot of other people are as well in tournaments. But on a 10-game slate, I don't think it should be too chalky. Blake Griffin, we talked about. Aldridge, we just highlighted over against Philly. I think he's in a good situation. I think he's just been smashing it. A guy that I'll also talk about from that team is DeRozan, who I want to get DeRozan at his low point, which he's approaching that. He's still pretty expensive at $7,600, but the guy's salary has been just suppressed, right? I mean, if you look at it, it was in the mid-8 ranges. It came close to $9,000 this year when he was having a good stretch, and it's suppressed almost $1,000 in just a couple of days, less than $500 over like night, basically, $800 overnight. So DeRozan, he's going to snap out of this at some point. He doesn't have a great matchup. If Simmons is out, he gets a little bit better of a matchup. Probably have Redick on him, which again isn't the best matchup. But buying DeRozan, this is what you want to do, is buy players at their low points. I think he's in a good spot to be bought at his low point. I want to talk about some value quickly and just some interesting plays. I think Vonleh is an interesting play against the Rockets, who really don't have anybody who can guard this guy. Yes, I know they just picked up Kenneth Faried, which I haven't talked about Kenneth Faried. We can talk about him at $4,400. His price has come up from minimum. I didn't even have him. I just kind of remembered about him. 20 points in his last game. This isn't going to win you a tournament, though. Even if he does this again, it's not going to win you a tournament. And he got extended run in a blowout. So I'm not sure that I want to really go back there. But Vonleh I like in this situation. I think he's not going to have a lot of ownership on him. I think that he does have a pretty good matchup if he does draw the start, so watch for that. If he gets in that 30-minute range, I don't think this is going to happen again. I think you'll see closer to this. Maybe 30 points, somewhere around there. But I don't think he's going to be owned in at $5,800. He's another value center type play you can go if that's where you want to plug him and place him. Morris, with Horford out, he's probably going to see a lot more usage. That's why I have him down there. Rudy Gay has a great matchup in the power forward position against Philadelphia, especially, again, if a guy like Simmons is out, things like that. So that's a good spot for Rudy Gay, who I believe is dirt cheap on DraftKings at least. $5,700 for Rudy Gay, who is a guy who, point per minute guy, over a point per minute guy over the past week or so. Yeah, so right around a point per minute guy, a little more. If he's going to get me close to 30 minutes, I want Rudy Gay in this situation pretty much all day. Couple quick last hitters here. Tim Hardaway Jr., good matchup against the Rockets. He's going to have to be the guy to score for this team. I haven't looked too much into Moutier and those other guys out there, Knox, whatever it might be, but good situation. DeAndre Bembry, he's in a great spot if we have, I believe, if we have Mr. Kevin out here. If he's going to be out, then we already have Kent Bazemore out indefinitely at this position, the small forward position. We already have Hooker, whatever his name is, again, butchering names. But I think Bembry becomes a great play at a cheap price of $5,300. Justin Holiday, if Marc Gasol's out, even if Marc Gasol's not out, is in a great situation. You also have JaMychal Green, if Marc Gasol's out, becomes a value play. A couple of guys, Reggie Bullock I put on here because Ish Smith is doubtful. Reggie Bullock should see a little bit more maybe ball handling abilities. If not ball handling, definitely see some usage rate increases. I put Evan Fournier on. He's been absolutely incredible as of late. And again, if you get in a situation in this game where Aaron Gordon doesn't play for some point, there's going to be increased usage for him. Richie Sexton slash, I guess I could put right here, Payne. So this is a blowout situation, right? Slash. So Sexton and Payne are guys who are going to be playing in blowout situations. I mean, I didn't put Ante Zizic here either. I mean, he's worth putting there, butchering the name probably, but he's $6,000. So right now you're not getting much value there. If you're going to pay for a point per dollar guy, or you're going to pay for a guy who can barely 5x, 6x for you, you're better off going with a guy like Cantor, who's $1,000 cheaper. You might even be better off going up for a guy $600 more. And Turner, even guys like Baines, who are $2,500 cheaper. I don't think it's necessary to play a guy like Zizic right now. JJ Redick is a great play if we do see Butler out again. We know what JJ Redick can do, and I don't think Butler will be out. But if Simmons is out, JJ Redick is going to see more usage, more shot attempts. So that's pretty much it. We have Harden in here. Of course, he's James Harden. Don't know how our lineups are going to get built. But this is 123, January 23rd, 2019. If you are still watching to this point, comment down below what you thought of the video. If you like the way that this is set up, showing you these things, I'm going to get it a little bit better in the spreadsheets, a little more informative and to the point. But we're just testing it out. We're polishing up the NBA. Best of luck on this big 10-game slate tonight. It should be fun. There's also a 9-game slate, but play the 10-game slate or the 9-game. Doesn't matter. There's just more money in the bigger prize pools for the 10-game. Look for single entry slates if you guys want to knock down tournaments. That's the easiest way. You don't have to face up against guys throwing in 150 lineups, 100 lineups. But yeah, my name's Sal. Best of luck in the NBA tonight. If you're still watching, comment below that you liked it. Also hit the subscribe button if you made it this far. Peace.